Imagine the scene. It is late evening at Buckingham Palace. The private secretaries have gone home, the corridors are quiet, and a monarch sits at an antique mahogany desk, fountain pen in hand. In front of them lies a stack of thick, cream-coloured stationery embossed with a royal crest. The task is one of the most enduring and non-negotiable duties of the crown, the writing of thank you letters. While we might imagine these notes are reserved for heads of state offering priceless diamonds or rare art, the reality of the royal mailbag is far more surreal, and frequently far more absurd. Every year, members of the British royal family receive thousands of gifts from the public, foreign dignitaries, and eccentric admirers. According to strict palace protocol, every single gift that is officially accepted requires a formal acknowledgement. This bureaucratic machine does not discriminate between a Fabergé egg and a bag of sawdust. The duty to respond remains absolute. This creates a bizarre juxtaposition where the most powerful figures in the British establishment must compose dignified, gracious prose regarding items that would baffle a seasoned auctioneer. From live animals that require immediate zoo transfer to domestic appliances that a queen would never operate herself, the list of accepted gifts is a testament to the strange relationship between the crown and its subjects. For decades, the royal correspondence team has filtered through the mundane to the magnificent, but occasionally an item arrives that defies all categorization. Yet the pen must hit the paper. The monarch must express gratitude. The absurdity of the situation is often lost in the rigid formality of the response, but the archives tell a different story. These are not just gifts, they are diplomatic incidents, cultural misunderstandings, and well-meaning blunders wrapped in bows. Tonight, we open the palace archives to examine the specific items that forced a royal hand to write a thank you note that likely required a stiff drink afterward. Number 10. The automatic potato peeler. When the late Queen Elizabeth II was married in 1947, the world was still reeling from the devastation of the Second World War. Austerity was the law of the land, and rationing was in full effect. Consequently, the wedding presents sent to the then Princess Elizabeth and Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten reflected a strange mix of high royalty and domestic practicality. Among the jewels and silver services arrived a gift that spoke to the gritty reality of post-war Britain, an automatic potato peeler. It was a modern marvel of the 1940s kitchen, intended to save the future queen from the drudgery of preparing tubers, a task she would arguably never have performed in her life regardless of the device. The Protocol of 1947 demanded that wedding gifts be acknowledged, and the sheer volume meant that while the princess could not handwrite every single note personally, she oversaw the correspondence that went out in her name. The idea of the future monarch acknowledging a machine designed to skin potatoes highlights the strange bridge the royals occupy between the domestic ideal and their elevated status. The device was likely sent to the royal kitchens, never to be seen by the couple again. Yet it remains on the official manifest of wedding gifts. It stands as a symbol of a time when the public wanted to equip their princess for a life of domestic management that simply did not exist for her. The gratitude expressed for such a utilitarian object cemented the royal family's attempt to appear connected to the everyday struggles of their subjects, even if the appliance itself was entirely superfluous to a woman with a full staff of chefs. Number 9. The two black beavers. The royal family has a long and complicated history with live animal diplomacy. While we often think of corgis or horses, the diplomatic gifts received on state visits frequently involve creatures that are far less domestic. On a visit to Canada, the Hudson's Bay Company, invoking a charter that dates back centuries, presented the monarch with two live black beavers. This was not a symbolic gesture involving plush toys or statues. These were living, breathing, semi-aquatic rodents. The presentation was rooted in a historical rent agreement where the company owed the crown 2 elk and 2 black beavers whenever the monarch entered their territory. The logistical nightmare of receiving live beavers is difficult to overstate. The monarch cannot simply keep them in the bathtub at Buckingham Palace. Yet the gift was formally accepted, and a letter of thanks was required to acknowledge the fulfillment of the ancient charter. The correspondence had to treat the arrival of these rodents with the same gravity as a diplomatic treaty. The beavers were promptly donated to the Winnipeg Zoo, as is standard procedure for live animal gifts, but the paper trail remains. It forces us to visualize the monarch graciously accepting custody of 2 large rodents, maintaining a straight face, and ensuring the appropriate stationery was dispatched to thank the company for upholding a contract written when the map of North America looked vastly different. Number 8. A giant cooler of organic grasshoppers. King Charles III has long been known for his environmental advocacy and interest in sustainable farming. However, this reputation occasionally invites gifts that test the limits of gastronomic politeness. During a royal engagement, the King, then Prince of Wales, was presented with a large cooler filled with organic grasshoppers. The gift was intended to highlight alternative, sustainable protein sources, a topic relevant to the King's interests in climate change and food security. While the intent was intellectual and noble, the physical reality was a box of insects presented to the heir to the throne. Protocol dictates that gifts of food must be handled with extreme caution due to security concerns, but they must also be acknowledged if accepted during a public walkabout. The King, known for his polite demeanour, accepted the gesture. One can only imagine the phrasing required in the subsequent correspondence to express genuine appreciation for a kilogram of chirping protein. It is a perfect example of how the King's specific public brand influences the strange items he receives. Unlike his mother, who received traditional tributes, Charles acts as a magnet for eco-eccentricities. The grasshoppers likely did not make it to the royal dinner table, but the interaction required a formal closing of the loop, validating the giver's contribution to the conversation on sustainability, no matter how crunchy the medium. Number 7. The miniature Iron Throne. During a visit to Northern Ireland, Queen Elizabeth II toured the studios where the hit series Game of Thrones was filmed. The show, famous for its violence, political treachery, and regicide, is perhaps the antithesis of the stable, constitutional monarchy Elizabeth represented. During the tour, she was presented with a miniature replica of the Iron Throne. The image of the real Queen inspecting the fictional seat of power became a viral sensation, but the gift itself presented a unique protocol challenge. It was a piece of pop culture memorabilia given to a woman who embodied the actual institution the show dramatized. The thank you letter for such an item has to navigate a delicate line between acknowledging the cultural phenomenon and maintaining the dignity of the crown. The Queen famously declined to sit on the actual prop throne during her visit, as an archaic rule suggests a British monarch should only sit on the throne of Great Britain. However, accepting the miniature version meant acknowledging the symbolism. The letter would have thanked the production team for their hospitality and the memento, bridging the gap between the fantasy of Westeros and the reality of Windsor. It represents a modern era of royal gifting where the monarch is expected to engage with global entertainment brands, acknowledging their fictional counterparts with grace and a touch of irony. Number 6. A bag of salt. In the British Virgin Islands, a specific tradition dictates that the governor, representing the crown, must be presented with a bag of salt annually as a form of rent for Salt Island. This tradition was revived in recent years, meaning the bizarre gift has once again entered the royal log. The bag of salt is not a culinary gift for the royal kitchens. It is a feudal due, a legal transaction manifesting as a mineral deposit. When the salt is presented, it is often sent to London, where it must be formally received. Writing a thank you note for a bag of salt requires a deep understanding of history. The letter is not thanking the sender for a condiment, it is acknowledging the sovereignty of the crown and the continuation of colonial-era traditions. The phrasing must elevate a simple household ingredient to the status of a crown jewel. It is a reminder that the monarchy operates on a timeline that ignores modern commerce. To the average person, a bag of salt is worth a few dollars. To the royal correspondence team, it is a priceless affirmation of territorial rights that demands a response on the highest quality paper available. Number 5. The Maori feather cloak. The Korowai is a traditional Maori cloak made of feathers and flax, considered a taonga, or treasure, in New Zealand culture. It is a gift of immense spiritual and chiefly significance. When royals visit New Zealand, they are often gifted these cloaks and are expected to wear them during ceremonies. While beautiful, they are also heavy, fragile, and entirely unlike any other garment in a Western wardrobe. The acceptance of a Korowai is a major diplomatic event. The thank you letter for such an item is one of the most complex to write because it must bridge a significant cultural gap. The letter cannot simply thank the giver for a coat. It must acknowledge the mana, or spiritual power, of the gift. It must show an understanding of the hours of weaving and the specific lineage of the feathers used. This is where the royal private secretaries earn their salaries, researching the specific tribal significance to ensure the monarch's words do not inadvertently cause offence. The physical reality of the cloak, often smelling of smoked flax and requiring specialised storage, is secondary to its diplomatic weight. The handwritten signature at the bottom of that letter ratifies a bond between the British Crown and the Maori people, turning a garment into a treaty of friendship. Number 4. The iPod from Barack Obama. In 2009, President Barack Obama visited Buckingham Palace and brought a gift for Queen Elizabeth II, a personalised iPod loaded with video footage of her 2007 visit to the United States and a selection of show tunes. At the time, the press mocked the gift as being overly casual, akin to buying a gadget for a teenager. However, the Queen was reportedly charmed by it. The challenge here was not the strangeness of the object itself, but the context. A consumer electronic device given by a head of state to a monarch who has received diamonds and racehorses feels incongruous. The thank you letter for the iPod had to navigate the informal nature of the gift while maintaining the formal relationship between the US and the UK. It had to validate the president's attempt at a personal connection without commenting on the pedestrian nature of the hardware. The Queen, who was in her 80s at the time, was already somewhat tech-savvy, but thanking a president for an MP3 player is a sentence that history likely never anticipated. It marked a shift in diplomatic gifting away from the purely ornamental to the functional and personal, even if the image of the Queen scrolling through a click wheel remains delightfully absurd. Number 3. The whale tooth. In Fijian culture, the presentation of a tabua, or a polished sperm whale tooth, is the highest honour that can be bestowed. It is not merely a gift, it is a sacred object used to seal agreements, offer atonement, or show supreme respect. During royal visits to Fiji, the monarch or senior royals are frequently presented with these teeth. They are heavy, yellowed, and to the uninitiated eye look like large curved bones. They are certainly not something one places on a mantelpiece in a standard English drawing room. The thank you letter for a tabua is fraught with protocol. The object represents the soul of the Fijian people. The correspondence must reflect that the monarch understands they are now the custodian of a sacred artifact, not just the owner of a piece of marine ivory. The letter effectively becomes a receipt for a piece of a nation's heritage. The physical awkwardness of transporting a whale tooth back to London is ignored in favour of the spiritual gravity. It is a stark reminder that the royal collection is not just a museum of art, but a repository of international anthropology, accumulated one handwritten note at a time. Number 2. High-value horse semen. The royal family's obsession with horse racing is well documented, and this passion leads to gifts that are highly practical within the industry but bizarre to the outside world. It is a matter of record that the Queen, as a premier breeder of thoroughbreds, was gifted nominations to top stallions. In layman's terms, she was gifted horse semen. These gifts are worth tens, sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds. A breeding right to a champion stallion is one of the most valuable gifts a horse owner can receive. However, the administrative reality involves the Queen of England acknowledging the receipt of genetic material. The thank you letters for these gifts are likely the most technical and industry-specific in the royal archives. They would discuss bloodlines, progeny, and hopes for the next racing season, completely normalizing a transaction that involves biological samples. It strips away the pomp of monarchy and reveals the country aristocrat underneath. To the Queen, this was likely a more exciting gift than a diamond brooch, but the mental image of the royal stationery being used to accept such a biological offering remains one of the most unique aspects of royal protocol. Number 1. The African bull elephant. The ultimate white elephant gift was, quite literally, an elephant. In 1972, President Ahidjo of Cameroon sent a live African forest elephant named Jumbo to Queen Elizabeth II to commemorate her silver wedding anniversary. Unlike the beavers or the sloths, an elephant presents a logistical crisis of massive proportions. Jumbo was flown to Britain, an operation that required custom crates, veterinary teams, and immense expense. Upon arrival, it became clear that the Queen could not keep Jumbo in the gardens of Buckingham Palace. The thank you letter for Jumbo had to be a masterpiece of diplomatic gratitude, expressing delight at a gift that was effectively a multi-ton logistical burden. The letter had to sound sincere while the private secretaries frantically arranged for the animal to be rehomed at London Zoo. Jumbo eventually settled there, but his arrival caused a diplomatic headache regarding his care and diet. The correspondence regarding Jumbo represents the peak of royal gifting absurdity. The obligation to accept a creature that can crush a car, the duty to write a polite note about it, and the scramble to ensure the gift doesn't accidentally destroy the royal household. It is the definitive proof that being a royal involves smiling and saying thank you, even when faced with a literal 2-ton problem. These letters, filed away in diplomatic archives and private collections, reveal a hidden side of monarchy. They show us that beneath the crown and the sash, there is a human being tasked with the eternal social chore of politeness. Whether it is a bag of salt, a tube of genetic material, or a live elephant, the system requires a response. It is a discipline that connects the ancient world of tribute to the modern world of bureaucracy. Do you think the tradition of accepting these bizarre gifts is a necessary part of diplomacy, or should the palace update its rules to say, "No thank you" to live animals? It is a fine line between cultural respect and logistical madness. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the strange reality of royal protocol, hitting the like button helps us uncover more stories like this from the archives. And for more investigations into the hidden mechanics of the monarchy, make sure you are subscribed. We have a video coming up on the secret security protocols of the royal jewels that you won't want to miss. I'll see you in the next one.